Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the Backpage CityXGuide remission process. We're going to give people a little bit of time to come online. It is just 12, um, and we'll get started in probably 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks, folks. And Carissa, where are you going to be joining us? Where are you physically today?
Today I am in Nevada. I'm actually in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. So Las Vegas, I spent the most money I've ever spent on food. I did. I decided that I was going to go to like a really expensive steakhouse, and
Mhm.
I'm like a cheap eats girl, but I actually spent money on it was Jose Andres Steakhouse, and it was
Uh-huh.
literally the best steak I've ever had in my entire life. I like ever. It was very, very much worth it.
That's worth it then.
It
Yeah.
was worth it. All
That's
right, I see
pretty
the
memorable.
participant. Yes, I see the participant number going up. We're going to get started at 12:02 with some housekeeping and introductions, and then we will turn things over to Carissa. Carissa, you have until 1:30. How much of that you use is completely up to you. If this takes an hour, it takes an hour. If it takes more than that, that's fine. For folks that can really only spend their lunch hour with us,
Mhm.
that is fine too. This webinar is indeed being recorded. Okay, I see the participant number going up, and we'll get started in a moment. Now, is Nevada home for you? I don't think so.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
My husband
You're
says
like,
I should have known when I married you, runaway girl. Runaway girl.
exactly.
True to the name.
True to the name. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jess Emerson, pronoun she, her. I am the director of the Human Trafficking Prevention Project. We work in partnership with Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service, the largest provider of pro bono legal services in the state of Maryland. I am completely and totally absent of teammates today. Our legal advocate, Saint, is actually out with a family emergency, and Heather is my usual partner in crime, is out sick. So I am flying solo. So everyone pray for me that I do this right and don't screw anything up. I actually corralled or convinced, or one or the other, a friend of mine, Julianne, who helps out with a bunch of things, HTTP, to kind of just be here in case there's any technical disasters, and also to watch the Q&A. This is a topic that is, I think, really important for survivors in terms of the potential compensation for them. But I'm sure folks will have a lot of questions, and in order for, I have ADD, so I need to be able to focus on Carissa and kind of, ask my questions and kind of pull additional info out. So if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A. Julianne will be monitoring them, and we're happy to answer them. Anything that we don't get to during the actual discussion, we'll get to afterwards. Like I said, this is being recorded. This will be posted on MVLS's website, which is where all of our, I think, 5+ years of webinars, quarterly webinars live. Um, and before I hand it over to Carissa, I want to introduce Carissa. And Carissa holds a JD/MBA from UCLA and a mathematics degree. Oh, I'm scared of you. from CSU Fresno, where she graduated summa cum laude. She is the founder of Runaway Girl FPC. She is an attorney, an author, and an advocate. And as a litigator, she has secured life-changing recoveries for survivors. She continues to work for systemic change through leadership, financial empowerment, legal advocacy, and legislation. I have had the pleasure of knowing Carissa for several years and very excited to have her teach us about the Backpage CityX remission process. I wish we had longer to access it, but it is what it is. And that's why we are having this webinar, so that hopefully the folks that are on this call can bring this information back to their organizations, so that you can make referrals for survivors who might be impacted, might have been impacted during the time period that you'll learn about. And for anyone who's on the call who is an attorney and wants to volunteer to take these cases, we have those opportunities as well. I'll let Carissa talk about any opportunities that she has, but we also can actually have you volunteer through Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service and take these cases. So we are excited to have you here today, Carissa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Jess. Thank you all for your just participating, showing up, and your interest in doing this. If you're watching the recording, thank you for visiting the recording and getting this information. One caveat, if you're watching the recording, is that these things change. Things are, this is a very rapid deadline that is approaching on February 2nd, 2026. And yet we still expect and anticipate to learn more as we're going through this process. So this will be a sort of higher level overview, and some of the things I say here may be spot on correct. Some things may be, I'm still learning, everybody's learning. And so just with all of that caveat.
So all of this is true as of
practicing, yes,
November 20th, 2025.
and it is also my opinion. Okay.
And it's Carissa's opinion. All right, are you able to share your PowerPoint?
So yes, and I will do that now, I think. I'm going to be doing it from a Canva presentation and getting into full screen mode here. So again, I want everybody to understand that this is a perspective that I'm coming at from an attorney, and in terms of what you all end up doing with this work and how you end up representing clients is unique to you, and what you decide. So let me pull in my presentation.
And I enabled share. Oh, fabulous. I always worry about that.
Can we see that?
Yeah. Well, I see you started screen sharing. It's thinking. I started screen sharing.
The fun of technology is here among us. And let me try it a different way.
Be patient with us while we figure this out.
Yeah.
It worked before.
I'm going to try sharing it this way. Yes or no?
Nothing. Julianne, do you see anything? Why is it not?
It says Carissa Phelps has started screen sharing.
Right.
Double click to enter full screen.
Enter full screen mode. So we just don't see anything.
If you double click, does it do anything? No?
No.
Why don't you shoot it to me?
I will do that.
I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. It
I
worked
will do
before,
that.
and now, of course, it does not. I'm going to pause recording while we figure this out.
It has. Okay, recording. So the DOJ and the anti-money laundering group of the DOJ specifically has a remission fund available through seized assets. These assets were seized through Backpage and CityXGuide and its related websites. And this information is all available at backpageremission.com. That is the official website that you'll go to, backpageremission.com. Epic Global is the administrator for this fund. And the reason that, because the remission fund is so large and they're expecting so many applications, that's why they sort of has outsourced this to Epic to monitor and to take in applications, including they had Epic build a website. And so this is the website many people have been directed to. And it's not exactly, if you're in the trauma-informed space and you're doing this work, it does have the safe exit button and it does have a lot of good language in it, but also the look and feel is still very government, very official. And so you'll see other websites as well, like backpageremissionnetwork.org that I think are a little bit more, that's run by NCMEC, and that's a little softer touch there. But this one is the official website. And it's important, in my view, if you're an attorney or if you're a practitioner working with a survivor that's doing this claim, to encourage not to just start filing the petition, encourage the claimants not to just say file a petition form and click that button, because when they click that button, what will happen is they will end up going into a mode where they're completing information and that information may not be saved. And somewhere in here, they talk about that. And so it'll have to be submitted. And if it's submitted online, it's okay if somebody's already submitted it online. You can supplement the application if you're working with someone who's already submitted online and they didn't include all the documents potentially for their future medical costs or their treatment plan, and they'd like to add it. But that big blue button, oftentimes people go ahead and hit that. If you are an attorney and interested in where this remission process comes from, the Code of Federal Regulations, Chapter 28, Part 9, is where the remission, victim remission section, you can focus in on there. There's a few things that might stand out to you. One is the request for reconsideration, which would be like the appeal process if somebody is denied. The way that I understand this process is that there's going to be first a review of the application, which is available at this document section, and we'll go over parts of the application just so we could highlight where the questions come from. But this documents section is important to click on that and then download a PDF of the version that you're going to be looking at. It's about an 8-page document, I think, to print out and just really get a good idea of what it looks like. But once that application is submitted through, if you're filling out the PDF, then you're going to probably be submitting it through email. The one thing caveat about email that I've heard from another attorney is that you're not able to send it encrypted when you send it through email, or password protected or encrypted. So that's one reason why you might want to get everything together by looking at that PDF document, get the whole file together, get all the supporting documentation together, but then go ahead and file the petition through the portal so that it's loaded through the portal, all of the information, but you have a hard copy of the application as well. The other option is to mail it in as well. So the first phase will be this where you're going to look at the dates here, and it says important dates and gives you an outline. Of course, the deadline, February 2nd, 2026. The start date for when Backpage was being used, it says January 1st, 2004 to April 6th, 2018, when they were shut down. Up here in the central paragraph, it says approximately January 1st, 2004. So if somebody's dates did go prior and you have some evidence of them being trafficked on Backpage.com prior, then I would include that as well in the remission form if you're doing this as an attorney. Again, this is more attorney speak, I know. And then CityXGuide took over where Backpage left off, is what they claimed, and April 8th, 2018 are the dates, or June 10th, 2020. And it's not just CityXGuide. they ran multiple sites, including one I'll go through that looked very similar to Backpage itself.
So if I am understanding you correctly, first of all, sorry for the noise. They're picking up recycling.
Okay.
It sounds like you're saying there is actually an appeal process.
There is, I'm going to stop share for a second.
Yeah.
There is a process. So if somebody has applied and they get a letter that says you're not eligible, we found you're not eligible because we don't see the dates that you were trafficked. Their dates don't match what this is. That would probably be one that's hard to appeal if you just don't even put the right dates in. You kind of say somebody was trafficked between 2000 and 2003 and you don't put any of the right dates, then they're going to say this person's not eligible. And then maybe they come to you and they say, look, I got this letter that says I'm not eligible, I'm being denied. The appeal process that's written in the Code of Federal Regulations gives 10 days for responding. It's not much time, but they would need to correct that and put in new information. So would have to put in new dates or new information to say that they were eligible actually, right?
So
So,
this question about appeal kind of goes to my main problem with this whole thing, which is the February 6th deadline.
February 2nd. Yes.
Second deadline.
Mhm.
So to me, that's ludicrous. And I know we're all, I'm not the only one who feels that way. We're all kind of scrambling. That's why we had this webinar. We're having this webinar. That's why everybody's recruiting for attorneys to help with these things. You know, maybe I'll keep that question till the end as far as strategy, but can you tell us a little bit about what's up with this such an early date here?
So if you go back into like where this stemmed from, the case was many years ago, right? Like 2018, the site was seized, these assets were seized. It dragged on, arguably because of COVID and other things. The criminal trial dragged on in Arizona. There was a mistrial. They had to bring in, evidence came in about child sex trafficking, and it shouldn't have, argued the Backpage attorneys. One of the Backpage founders even, committed suicide during this time, and there was so much that went on during this trial, and then finally, to come to a close, end of that chapter. They really wanted, I think they want to try to get these funds out as quickly as possible. So it came from a place of wanting to get the funds out as soon as possible. Now, myself, I've known about the Backpage funds that they were seized for quite some time, but obviously they couldn't
Yeah.
have a remission process or a restitution process if there wasn't a criminal conviction. So we were all sort of awaiting that criminal conviction. The very sad part of this was that some people had already sued Backpage civilly, and some people early enough to where it settled before the criminal case started. But those people who were in the middle of a lawsuit, maybe against Backpage, people who lost their family members because of being sex trafficked and murdered over Backpage ads, like people who were trafficked as minors all over Backpage, and Backpage knew or should have known. These people had lawsuits against Backpage, and they were all stayed during the period of time of this criminal case. So you can imagine, like, 7 years plus of just sitting there waiting, watching, what's going to happen. And then in the meantime, Backpage is able to use some of their resources and assets for defense money. Defense attorneys are being paid, other people are being paid. They're getting, they actually receive some of their assets back. And then these individuals
Constitutional right.
yeah.
Yes.
But
I'm okay with
these individuals who are waiting and waiting, well, I mean, to use corporate resources for if somebody was,
Yeah, well, that's a
yeah.
challenge that we're having.
So yeah, but they were able to do
Much
that.
more than Backpage.
It was fine. It was they had a very robust defense team. And so in the end, this around December 2024, after the criminal conviction, December 2024, the DOJ sat down with MLR's money laundering group, and they decided how much of these assets are going to go into a remission fund, a survivor, victim claimant, because some people are deceased who are qualifying for this, how much of this can go into this fund. And then December 2024, there was a little bit of a press release that said, 215 million, but they hadn't decided on a process yet. And so the process didn't get released until July 31st of 2025. So
Right.
that's the date that 6-month clock started, is that July 31st, 2025. Now, the issue is a lot of people weren't watching it, didn't know the things that we knew in terms of what was going on with this case and the funds that were seized and what would happen. So everything is not in line to sort of
Yeah, no, that's understandable. It just,
right.
it does feel, given some of the challenges that we're having with other things through the federal government in terms of ridiculously short turnarounds for grant periods, no grants at all for human trafficking money.
Right.
A lot. Oh, now it's perfect. Whatever you just
Something
did,
happened.
fixed it.
Magic happened.
You fixed it. And these are things that I have experienced personally, like ridiculous, 2-week turnaround dates for federal grants. No federal monies have been released for that are specific to human trafficking, completely cutting down, or not completely, cutting significantly the office, the trafficking in persons office. This just falls in line with a lot of the concerns that I already have. But obviously, this goes back to far before any of these other problems.
Yeah, I mean, I will be highly disappointed if any of this fund goes back into the general fund or something like that. That would be very disappointing. But my hope is that we exhaust the 215 million from Backpage. But there's an additional amount as well from CityXGuide that was added in. And this is where it gets very I think lawyers need to lawyer up. We need to figure out how to make arguments for our clients if they qualified for restitution from CityXGuide, because in 2021 there was a restitution process which is different than remission, and it comes with more rights, I think, for notification. And so there are people who were listed on CityXGuide, even people who had federal cases against traffickers that were not notified about the 2021 $15 million of restitution that was available in 2021. And that included, the cash and also Bitcoin that was seized from CityXGuide during that time, during that 2020 when they shut them down.
And there's no chance that they will change this date, given that it's.
I mean, we should discuss that. I think the chances of them changing it are low. I've heard if there is a
Like, what if there's still a ton of money left over because very few survivors have been able to go through the process in this short amount of time?
I mean, we're going to miss people. That is the biggest argument for having, some sort of extension. But there's also survivors and victims that are coming back to me and saying, we want this resolved. We want to get on with our lives. We want to move forward. So it's pulling in both directions,
Yes.
when some people want to be able to resolve, get this over with, and then other people, and myself included, want to advocate to get the word out to more groups all over the world who might qualify. So that is an
Okay. All right. So that's just been my primary problem, is the date.
Mine too, and it's on the top of my ask every time I ask. I ask for an extension, and right now we're being told, if I was told that if we have to apply without everything because the time frame, then we need to still apply by that date, but then let them know that we need more time because we're waiting for records or we're waiting for something. But let them know.
Okay, thanks. Keep going. That was just my main.
So yeah, I put the little stop here because I encourage people just to stop before they start filling out this petition form when I speak directly with claimants. Look at the PDF first. So here's a sort of claim progression. And again, to go back to your time period, and this is such a short time period, if you're taking on one of these cases or walking alongside of someone who is doing this form, I wouldn't expect it to be done in 2 days. There are attorneys who maybe already have a lot of the information, and so it could be done faster. But this is just to work up the claim, to work up the petition. I think about 4 weeks is what you want to give yourself. The interviewing, the sort of getting the records requested, using something like Chart Squad, to help keep costs down in terms of requesting past medical records. And we'll talk about the importance of those medical records. They go two directions to help with your case. So the initial time frame, we'll give it about a week. I think I would even say a couple of interviews in that first week to get this all done and to get some people have had to have notaries for some medical providers want notarized requests. And so that could be difficult. Some sealed records that you may have to get access to with prosecutors and attorneys. So those types of things. And then the timelines, really mapping out the timelines, figuring out what kind of declarations, what kind of statements, drafting those declarations for both your claimant and then also for your declaration that will go into this as well, because I do think that a one-page declaration by an attorney will go a long ways just to explain the connections between, what evidence you're submitting and then why this claimant is eligible, both eligible because of the evidence you've submitted, the proof you've submitted, and then also that they qualify for the amounts that are being requested as well, because those are related to trafficking. So you'll want to have that. And then you need to start setting up appointments with specialists and do assessments. Those take time as well. And the final step would be completing the declarations, finalizing them, explaining the next steps to the client in terms of what you understand to be the next steps. They should be getting a letter about eligibility, probably closer to the close date, if not after the close date. Those eligibility letters will start going out. And then what to do if you're found not to be eligible, understanding that in terms of making a further claim if further proof is needed. Declaration again by claimant and by the attorney needed, and you're doing the best that you can within the time frame. It's not going to be perfect. That just has to be said again and again and again. We are hosting these weekly webinars every Wednesday at 1 p.m. and we invite everyone to attend. And that means if your claimants want to attend, many people who are applying are also, because this spans back, to over 20 years ago, many people fortunately have moved on with their lives. They've moved forward. They are themselves attorneys themselves. They have, paralegal experience, and they're paralegals. They themselves work in the medical field. There are plenty of survivors out there who both qualify as claimants and then also might be able to assist in this process. So they become part of this network that this community that we've helped to create called Survivors First. And we do try to go over all of what I'm doing here, plus more, and bring experts on to talk about their specific area. I'm going to be bringing someone on, Jess, you might want to come on to it. That's a benefits expert to talk about how some of these claims being paid might impact benefits. Deceased.
Right, because then if you all of a sudden have this X amount of money, how does that impact SNAP? How does that impact, how does that impact TANF?
Yes, exactly. SNAP, food benefits, TANF, yes, all of the above.
When is that one? Because we will definitely pass that on.
I think I'm going to do it I'm asking him for the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. So not this Wednesday, not the Wednesday coming up, but the following, which I think is the 4th or 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Week of December, Wednesday.
4th.
The 4th. So this information is just a reminder again of the trafficking timeframe is going to be what shows that someone's eligible. These sites were seized. They were seized. And so a lot of the information, whether it was the stuff that was public facing in the ads or how the ads were listed and people's email addresses that they used to list the ads or payment methods that they had to pay for the ads, all of that was seized and is in the hands of the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the FBI are going to be working in collaboration to determine eligibility. This could put up many red flags for people. So we need to be, if you're working with a claimant, if you're working with a survivor, right, to say, oh, the FBI is going to investigate you. It's not like the greatest feeling in the world. So I've asked Epic, I've asked the administrator about this process, and they've assured me that what's going over to the FBI are the emails, the phone numbers, the ad descriptions, the things that will determine if this ad did in fact exist.
Demographic material around the ads.
Around the ads. And so short of having the ad, right, like an image of the ad, they're going
Nobody
to
has.
verify that that's an image of the ad. I mean, with today's AI and other things, you can imagine you could create anything you want, but they're going to verify this is the ad. That's what the job of the FBI with this database that they have is going to be. And so it's supposed to put us at ease. It doesn't put me
Especially
at
for
full
criminalized
ease.
survivors.
Yeah, I still want to say to everybody, just understand that you are submitting your information to a federal agency. That is what we're doing here. It's not just to but it's not to a court. It's not in a completely sealed off, closed manner. Some people, rightly so, like yourself, Jess, who do vacatures, expungements, expunctions, they're up in arms about this because they just worked tirelessly to get rid of all of this record, and now they're putting something else on the record, right?
Yeah, I have concerns.
Maybe it's a criminal case that, that's long gone, and that's what you're citing to in order to show that someone's been trafficked because they were arrested for the ad, and now becomes part of your evidence you're submitting. So really thinking through this is also part of that 4-week time frame of, what are you submitting? What do you have to submit versus what do you need to submit? And I think erring on the side of what you need to, absolutely only the things that are necessary to determine eligibility are submitted for eligibility. Only the things that are, so once you think you've met eligibility, which means eligible if sex trafficking, you are a sex trafficking victim that was trafficked over CityXGuide or Backpage.com during this time period. Anytime during this time period. Didn't have to be the whole time period, but anytime during this time period.
But the onus, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I'm happy to hear this, the onus is not on the petitioner to find the ads or communicate about.
No.
So someone is doing that searching.
Someone will do that searching with the evidence that the proof that is submitted. You have to have some proof. They're not going to be able to do it only with a statement.
Well, that's another one of my questions is that, so I'm thinking of a particular client who was definitely trafficked during this time period. They were not privy to any of the ad placing stuff. So it's not 100% clear if they were actually being trafficked on online, let's just say, on any website. But the description of her trafficking is very much an outcall. It sounds very typical in terms of like they were in one place, then they were taken to this place to provide sex acts. How that happened is unclear to her because she wasn't involved in that. And so my question was, should someone like that apply? Her trafficking was square during this time period, and given the popularity of Backpage, my hunch says it's a high probability that her traffickers used Backpage to advertise sex acts with her or for her, or no, with her. And so
some of the evidence there might be just like, does she recall photographs being taken of her?
Right, she does. And
so those photographs,
the name that, maybe they were calling her.
So describing then like the background or where you were, if there was clothing or no clothing, positions even. I mean, it sounds, I know, very
Yeah, no,
awful,
we,
but it's those types of things that we remember from these ads when we're working with them. It's awful. And I'm still having to go into the
yeah,
Wayback Machine and search the cities that she does remember being in. I'm assuming I think you said she, but
yes, I said she.
the cities that they remember being in are also important to note. So, if photographs were taken, sometimes photographs were not taken
Mhm.
of the victims and other people's photographs were used. And so
Right.
that also
Fake
poses
photos.
some problems, right? But then you have to show, they were in these different locations, hotel rooms and places being trafficked. And some people actually have proof of that through, it's amazing, but Google's been tracking for a long time people's
I know.
locations and they don't know it, but they sometimes have it on their Google Gmail as like
Okay.
accounts, some tracking that's been going on. But cities that they were in, if they recall photographs being taken, a description of the photographs, and then if the trafficker is a known person, it doesn't mean you have to share the trafficker information. That's not required and it's not recommended by me at all. But if they do know whose phone was being called when buyers were showing up or whose phone was being utilized,
Right.
then you
That's
can
kind of what I asked her to start thinking
do a
about as far as
background.
like
Yeah, do a background and sort of
tangential things.
you could pull your own background on that person with an investigator and maybe get the phone numbers, and then those phone
Okay.
numbers will be the
All
ones
right.
submitted and searched for too, sometimes in the Wayback Machine if you're helping to fill out the application. So there are ways if and unfortunately this is the case. And if you look at the way that massage parlors were advertised on Backpage and CityXGuide both, you would not anticipate that anybody who was being sold in those facilities, those
Business. Yeah.
whatever they were, right? These brothels, the way they were advertised was like, you know, there are 7 Asian women waiting for you to serve you, or they were just multiple people being advertised. You don't know who those people were. We know hundreds of people would go through those in locations over a year period of time. So we, you know, expect some people to not know that whether or not they were advertised on there, just from the nature of some of the advertisements.
Yeah. And my thing was just like, I can infer that that's probably what happened, but I don't have, you know.
Right.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna plug my laptop in while you go with your next place.
okay. So the other thing, prior awards. So again, trafficking time frame, that's going to be all about eligibility of, were they trafficked during this time frame? And then as Jess pointed out, the evidence will vary in terms of how much evidence they may or may not have. They do not, and I'll go through a slide on this too, but they do not have to have testified, reported, have a law enforcement report, anything like that. In terms of prior awards or prior cases where they might have been awarded restitution, many times that restitution has not been paid. So even though they may be due restitution in a case, they may not have been paid that. So when you make a note of the restitution, also making a note of it's not collected and it probably won't be collected if it's against somebody who is convicted of trafficking them and it's not anticipated that it's going to be collected. Settlements that have been made related to Backpage. We've gone back and forth with this one. It's really important, I think, to go through all the settlements with a survivor, with a claimant, and to understand that those have to be disclosed if they're related to the Backpage and CityXGuide claim. If there are injuries that they have recovered for, and it's really hard to separate them out, it's almost impossible to separate out, we've done some work around joint and several liability for some of these injuries, and it's probably going to need to be disclosed. The issue with some settlements is that they're confidential and sometimes under, a court order cannot be disclosed. And so we would have to tell your opposing party that you'd have to get their permission really to share this information. And that can be an entirely additional step that you may or may not want to be able to take. It may be one that you end up not needing to take. I'm not sure about how these are going to work out. I do know that I asked about the way that they were going to deduct prior victim compensation or restitution that's been paid or settlements that have been received or awards that have been received. And the order of operations in terms of the math that's going to be done is they're going to, according to what the administrator shared with me, they would be subtracting first that amount from whatever amount is deemed compensable, whatever amount they decide they're going to be paying for. They're going to subtract the past victim compensation, settlements, those types of things. And then if the fund is depleted, then the pro rata happens, then the multiplication happens to divide it down, the division happens. So that means like if this fund is depleted because let's say that they find that there's $400 million of claims that are 430, just make my math easier, but $430 million of claims are compensable. They think that they're going to be able to pay all of these out. I'm not saying that's going to be the number, but they decide this much money is absolutely, these claims are valid. We want to pay 430 million, but we don't have 430 million. So they would have to divide everybody's award pretty much in half, 50%. And so when they do that 50% cut is important, right? So that's why subtracting first, then dividing is the order of operations that I understand will happen. This comes back to the question of, is this worth it? I don't know if anybody's gotten that question yet, but is this worth it has been a big question. The estimate is like, this may be in the four figures. It may be thousands of dollars. It may be tens of thousands. It may be much more. Some of the claims that are going in are hundreds of thousands or millions because the types of injuries that we're making claims for last a lifetime. And these treatment plans forward look 30, maybe 40 years into their future. So,
I mean, that kind of begs the question about access and privilege and perfect victimhood, right?
So one of the things that we did, we hosted Dr. Chambers from Dignity Health on one of our webinars that you could get access to and request a recording of. But he has developed a process where he's hoping to increase equity, decrease bias in this whole process through his experience of serving victims and survivors of trafficking over the last 10 years. He's come up with a sort of a short way of determining what those forward-looking costs would be, and then giving people an estimate of what those would be to submit in their Backpage remission form. So that's accessible, trying to create more access and increase equity, decrease bias. It's not the same for everyone because he does do a 30-minute assessment to understand, like if somebody has a lifelong injury, they're going to have, in terms of a medical, diagnosis or some injury that is incurable, then they're going, to have a different outcome.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about someone who can afford, a great assessment versus, someone who's, doesn't and who's not listening to this and doesn't know where to go for an who doesn't know to go for an assessment kind of
thing. Absolutely. I mean, there's other versions of restitution or remission that are much more straightforward than this one, and easier to access. And arguably, if they had talked to maybe us first, Jess, we might have said, make it 25,000, just do that. Just make it 25,000 if we think that's going to be the number. And then anybody above that, we can look at their cases. And if they want to submit more information and
like a baseline for everybody.
And if it gets too much, then we'll go below. But we're talking about international claims too. So imagine you know, some people also are going to be having life-changing amounts that are in the 4 and 5 figure amount, but to your point, they're going to have to be assessed and have the types of claims on file that measure up dollar for dollar what these other claims are measuring. Then they're going to be pro-rated down. So it's all of it is very not perfect science.
No, I get it. I
For
would just
sure.
hate for, someone with access to take all of, and then there's kind of scraps left for folks who can't.
That's what's going to happen. I mean, I'm saying it on a
That's
record.
all.
I know that, but we're trying, that's why we're trying to get as much information to as many people as possible and get access to the doctors and the lawyers and everybody as much as possible. That's why NCMEC's doing what they're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, why you're doing this, is because we're trying to increase access for sure, but we're not doing it in Spanish. I haven't had anybody do it in Spanish yet. Even though the forms are available in Spanish, and that's the only other language they're available in. So
That's what I'm saying. This process needs to
um,
be longer. Like we're really just making this available to certain victims.
yeah,
And I'm
I
getting more angry as we go through this.
well, let it be your fuel for getting the word out in more languages. One of the partners we have is Parasol Cooperative, and so Parasol Cooperative is, I think, in 158 different languages. They have an AI chatbot. So I've been talking to their team about what are the legalities. I mean, we can't make their chatbot a lawyer, but the cool thing about their chatbot called Ruth is that it's trauma informed. Every step of it is designed in a way to, ensure safety, ensure that it's not collecting any data or information, which is a big deal when you're trying to complete these, ask questions about this process. So my hope is, my dream world, Epic would have met with Ruth before they put this out, and there would have been a chat bot in every language programmed with all the information they have. But as we're doing cleanup now and
I
trying to
know.
figure this out, we're gonna, be trying to get Ruth, an instance of Ruth trained in all of this information without making it a lawyer. We can't make it a lawyer, but get it trained in this information so that it can disseminate the information in different languages.
Okay.
And that is the best I could do.
Yep. I know. Well, you're working with what you have. It's just that again, it shows the government only thinking about
Certain
this.
victims.
Yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. So the impacts of trafficking that they recognize in this form, again, medical documentation of past injuries during trafficking. And I mentioned earlier, those go towards a couple of things. I think it goes towards eligibility, if it could show that you were being trafficked during that time period. It also goes to the actual, award amount, the amount that you're asking for in terms of future costs for that past injury. The future costs for that past injury, those can be estimated by someone who's not, this is going to sound a little, I know it's going to sound a little crazy the way I'm trying to say this, but it's the licensed professional is required for the medical documentation of those injuries, right? So a licensed professional means, you didn't just like have your wrist broken and not go to the doctor. Like you had your wrist broken, you went to the doctor, and you have like some record of your wrist being broken during that time period. So that would show that that past injury happened then. If you didn't go to the doctor when your wrist was broken, then that means we need to get you into the doctor now, which to your point, Jess, right? You have access to a doctor, we're assuming, and that doctor could then put in writing, this injury is a past injury, probably from this many years ago, right? Now, what type of future do you have with that broken wrist? What type of future medical needs do you have? A doctor can write about that too, right? You're going to need to have some repairs, some surgery, something like that is going to have to happen. Now, how do you get the costs for those repairs and surgeries and the things that you will need to support the repairs and surgeries, right? Orthotics or whatever it is. That's probably going to be a different type of analysis that attorneys are sort of used to working, these types of cases, if you've done accidents, car accidents, those types of things. So you've got to get somebody who can analyze the future costs as well of those past injuries. It's not necessarily the doctor who is the treating doctor who's providing the medical documentation that's going to give you the future medical needs costs, right? That you're going to include in this. So those could be two separate documents, two separate sort of submissions for the same claim. And then the forward-looking behavioral health treatment plan, the behavioral health treatment plan, usually when you're seeing a therapist or something like that, they're billing directly, or they know something about their billing, even if they're billing your insurance or medical provider. That usually is going to come with the quote or the statement for how forward-looking that is, but it might be a separate calculation as well. So nothing in the form, when you review the form, will say the doctor has to provide also the cost that you're claiming. It's not necessarily the doctor's job or strong suit even to do those types of calculations. So I think it's important to know. Now, we work with Dr. Chambers, and so does NCMEC and others, and his medical safe haven clinic, and people that he's training are going to include that all in one document, all this impact of trafficking and the requests in one document. So that may not happen for everyone. So again, back to eligibility and proof. The actual images or the advertisements can be submitted, but be sure that there's no CSAM or potential CSAM. And if the image is something that is embarrassing or feels like, we don't want to submit it into a federal document, again, federal agency, and it needs to be redacted in a certain way, it says on the application not to alter images, but I've been told that that would be okay to do that for images that that a claimant wants to redact because they don't want those images in a public document. They could do that.
And just not that because I don't know who is still with us.
Mhm.
CSAM, child sexual abuse material. We used
yes.
to call it child porn, but more appropriately now we're referring to it as what it is, which is child sexual abuse material, just in case anybody was like, what is that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm an acronym junkie probably.
No, I get it. I just want to make sure that
I
everybody is in on the acronyms.
just throw it around. So phone numbers used, I have a little asterisk there because if they don't remember the phone numbers, that's okay. We talked about, pulling data or like a credit report or a background or something from these data handlers who sell your data everywhere all over the internet. We could purchase, reports to look up all of their data, or they could request it for free from some of those individuals as well. You're allowed to do that. And see what phone numbers maybe are tied to them. But a lot of times these would be like burner phones or throwaway phones. And so the interesting thing is, if you've been in this work long enough, that anyone you've done outreach with, you probably have about 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 phone numbers for. And so if you can ask your claimant, like, is there one person you always called, like one phone number you had memorized? Then maybe that person who they have their phone number memorized and who they always called has saved some of these numbers or has a history or document, some people even have written them down, right? So knowing what those phone numbers were, so could that, during the different time frames, you could provide the phone numbers that may be used so that eligibility can be determined. Same thing with emails, any specific language that was used. And again, this is the type of language. This is on, the reason I pulled this from the Wayback Machine was because it's May 6, 2020. Backpage is shut down. It is shut down. Like if you would have gone to the site at that time, it would have said it was seized and shut down. But CityXGuide used a site called backpage.co that looked a lot like, almost exactly like Backpage, even the same logo there. So you might get a claimant who says, I was trafficked on Backpage in 2020. And you're like, no, Backpage was shut down. No, actually Backpage.co was run just like Backpage and looked just like Backpage.
Yeah. I
Although,
actually thought that was. I was like, oh, look at that. And then
yeah,
I didn't even look at the date.
yeah. So that's the, sort of nuanced things that I've been coming across. And they used CityXGuide used other sites as well, 6 sites total that were used. And we're putting those on our website, survivorsfirst.community, along with some other information that is difficult to obtain without doing more research. Any clothing that was used in the ad, racial descriptions are usually in the ads. Unfortunately, that's how people were advertised by race oftentimes, body parts and other language or emojis that were used in the ads, as well as locations, all these different cities and countries and places all over the world.
And
where-
also
Mhm.
special requests, things like that. So if your clients were doing any, you can see it right there. If they were doing any kind of fetish work,
Mhm.
you know, particular type of sex acts, and those were particularly advertised, definitely make sure to include that as well.
And ages, and just because someone says they're 21 does not mean they're 21. So, but if they remember
How
that
they were
they
advertised,
put,
yeah.
yeah, if they remember the age they were put on the ad to say that how they were, that was sometimes just to evade law enforcement, things like
Yeah.
that.
No,
Uh,
I'm thinking about a client who was specifically, I'm remembering was specifically advertised because she looked so young.
right.
And like there was, I know she mentioned that there was language around that. So,
So ages, yes. The
okay. I'm just gonna stop up. It's almost 1 o'clock and I've seen we've lost some participants as a result. Don't worry. Carissa has until 1:30 and this recording will go on until that time. Yeah, hi Lisa. The recording will not be sent out, but it will be posted on MVLS's webpage where all of the HTTP materials are. I will, however, because this is so important and so timely, I'll make sure to send it to the MD HTTP listserv as soon as it is uploaded. So I will do that as a result of that. Thanks, Lisa.
And we will, like I said, have more information on our survivorsfirst.community page as well to be able to share more and more of this information. And it's not as much as it's a straightforward process because it's a short application, it's not a straightforward process if you've been trafficked. Doesn't feel that way. So,
And actually, let me just ask one more question about that.
doing this
How
in support
in,
of payment.
sorry, you cut out and then I thought you had stopped. I didn't mean to interrupt you. How in-depth does the description of the trafficking history have to be, just so we can prepare our clients? Like, I'm very clear that when you're vacating a charge, you have to give, you're asking the criminal legal system, which is notoriously not, I would almost say, hostile to kind of undoing its mistakes. So you really have to and a lot of the folks who are, looking at these petitions don't understand the what trafficking is and the
You
issue
do
of
not. You do not. I mean,
not
and
beautiful.
that's sort of what that medical documentation and the forward-looking plan is about. As if you're claiming a specific injury is related to the trafficking, right?
Mhm.
Then that detail is probably going to be given to the doctor or to the therapist so that they can make a statement and say,
Beautiful.
right,
Okay.
this is part of this. But no, they're not looking for complete narratives on your trafficking situation.
That's a lot for folks.
It's a lot. And it doesn't, it's triggering, it's very
Mhm.
harmful potentially. And even with the timeline, uh, you know, recalling time is triggering. It's difficult. So being understanding of that the whole time. I think one of the important note when you're working with, I'm going to have a whole different presentation just for your providers that are working, to support claimants during this process, but making sure that they They did not have to testify in order to do this. They didn't have to report it to law enforcement. They do not have to identify the trafficker. So
I get this put on a t-shirt. You don't need to report, testify, or identify. That
yes,
should be like my t.
yes,
I need that
that
on a
needs to
t-shirt.
go up everywhere, right? In order to qualify and to apply. So
Beautiful.
that's very important. Records, these can be difficult, you know that, to track down, and also could be very important in terms of information they contain in them. So getting the foster care, probation records, those types of things, if they're taking time and they're not going to be there in time for you to get the application in, even a couple weeks ahead, then I would make sure that you submit the application, submit the petition, and then just make a note, a separate statement about what records are still being held up or you're waiting for.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about with the appeal process. Like, if you just got this information, let's say I didn't find out about this as a survivor until January, and so my application is just not all that bumped up, and because we didn't have the time, could the appeal be we needed to get it in and we want to supplement it?
I think when you make the application, what you would do, this is my opinion, but I think you would actually say in a separate statement that you are requesting these, and these records, which is going to take this amount of time
Okay.
in your estimate. Um,
I just would,
whether that's the claimant applying themselves or not. And I would still put in estimates for some things if you have them, but say this is, we anticipate supplementing this application with more information as soon as these records are available, or as soon as we get the medical appointments that have been requested, or we're in the process of requesting them.
okay.
But these are difficult records to obtain.
Mhm.
And important ones, they may have been destroyed. Sometimes law enforcement is is difficult to say this on a recording, but I'm just going to say it. Survivors, victims have been re-exploited through the human trafficking education system. Their images, their likeness, their stories have been used.
I say it all the time, so you don't have to.
So if that has happened, and in the
I said
process
it
of
about a month
educating
ago.
people, the process of educating people, you have in your possession people's Backpage ads, then contact them. Like, do the right thing, right? Contact them. Be in contact with them. Let them know. Say mea culpa. Say I'm sorry. Say I use this for educational purposes. I redacted, hopefully, the identifying factors of who you are in them. But I know this is you because I investigated your case or worked on your case, and I know this is you, and I know you qualify for this. Help them get
You
that,
just gave me an idea. Okay.
because there are so many presentations. I used to have to, when law enforcement and I would present together, say, please pull those. Like, I can't have those ads up there. Those people could be out there right now and they're training to be trainers. And I don't know. Unless I know everything about how you have that ad, like, I can't have that in our presentation. So I know they're out there. I know they've been used in closed law enforcement trainings as well.
Yep.
I know a lot of prosecutors are doing the right thing and getting the information out to people who are in their database as having, been trafficked, but I don't know that all the ones that weren't investigated or weren't prosecuted that ended up in those presentations are being contacted. So please, please, please.
A chance to do the right thing. Okay.
Please. Yes.
Yep.
So I'm gonna try to wrap up. Let's see
Okay.
how much more I have, and then that way, if there are more questions and answers or more we could talk about as well. Keeping costs down with Chart Squad, yes. So okay, wages as a part of the claim. These are interesting because they're not like, these lost wages are unpaid wages. They're basically times that you were working, that a claimant was working, in terms of big quotes around working, but being trafficked and not paid.
You were doing unpaid labor. You were earning
Labor.
somebody labor. And if working makes you uncomfortable, that word, it doesn't make me uncomfortable, but if it does, use the term unpaid labor.
I mean, nothing could make me that uncomfortable anymore, Jess, but I think what I try to do is just make sure that people understand that when you talk about work, it's usually like you clock in and clock out, you
Yeah.
have set hours, you have those types of things. When you're being trafficked, those things don't exist, whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking, you don't have a work day necessarily,
But the way that I explain it is
or an
that
hour's work per day.
there's a ton of work that goes on every single day in the underground economy that's not exploitive, right? And would we say that, that's not necessarily exploitive, but that happens because communities are completely cut off from mainstream employment opportunities. They're blocked from employment because of
Yeah,
criminal
that
records and
work is work. Maybe they
Yeah,
could start and end the job. With trafficking,
yeah,
I don't feel like you can start and end I feel like there's this
true.
difficult thing about, hours per day, when a lot of the
That's true.
ads would say available 24 hours, and
Mhm.
they would be answered in the middle of the night, and people would be put on drugs to stay up
Absolutely.
all night. And so those things have to be part of the consideration, in my view, when you're looking at hours per day or days per week,
Mhm.
and when they're calculating the lost wages.
Think
Money
big.
came back into, somebody's hands, didn't necessarily go to them if it went to further the trafficking. So I think making a note of that, if it went towards hotels, ads, even nails, hair, or other items that would have been used for the
That's your
trafficking,
unpaid labor.
travel, drugs, things that would have been used to further the trafficking, then that needs to be noted as well. Deceased is a complete section here. What we don't know, and the question is still out, is whether or not children, especially children that were present, either mom was pregnant and being trafficked, or they were young children who were victims of the trafficking themselves because they were separated from their parent during that trafficking period or time. There's not an indication that they could apply for forward-looking, behavioral health, wellness, those types of things, or potentially medical if they were born with any sort of drug addiction or other birth issues because of the trafficking. That hasn't been indicated yet, that children, especially of those that were deceased, would have that claim. But I've asked. And I would make the claim, even if, I think it would help in other ways, maybe for that child to be able to get services. In terms of medical supporting documentation, those medical bills, making sure to request those, dental expenses. And then it specifically says removal of tattoos placed by trafficker. Traffickers were not necessarily the tattoo artists, but I think what they're saying is like they were tattoos that were required by the trafficker or requested by the trafficker or wanted by the trafficker, not necessarily that they actually put the tattoo on them.
Although I have seen that, but far
yeah,
less
yes,
often.
far
Far more often,
um, right. But it could be
professionals do.
scarring as well, other dermatology issues as well in the medical part that we've talked about in other past presentations. And the supporting medical documentation from a licensed professional. When you calculate the future medical needs and do the estimates, you'll be doing research, just like a doctor would need to do research. So doing that research of what you think the future medical needs or costs are going to be and including that, then supporting it with the medical documentation or the records that show the injury are the important steps I think you have to take for this medical section, and including dental.
Yeah, we always forget about dental and eye
Yes,
stuff
yes,
and
yes. Dental and eye as well.
vision. Yeah.
Um,
In fact,
the
I definitely have clients who have had their vision damaged.
Yes, and the medical professionals working as much as you can with people who have the background and experience in this to provide statements is helpful, but that, again, to your point, Jess, may not be accessible to everyone. And behavioral health needs require a treatment plan that treatment plan could last into 30 years, 40 years, lifetime. I think the one that Dr. Chambers is doing, some treatment he knows of that, could last a decade. He's included in part of the calculation, but if someone is like, no, I think I'm going to need this the rest of my life, then they need to tell the doctor that so that they can make that adjustment.
Is
And
Dr. Chambers doing these things pro bono?
pro bono, yeah, with dignity,
Beautiful.
yes.
So
And
yeah, if you're listening and you know of someone who can help with this, who's not a lawyer, who can help with this stuff,
Mhm.
please reach out.
Yes, and organizing the records, again, because it may relate to eligibility or the future medical costs, medical billing that is in the past that was paid, including therapy and co-pays, that type of thing, need to be collected as well and requested. Those could have gone to collection, so you might have seen them when you worked with somebody for the, debt harm, reducing
Oh,
debt.
debt bondage
Debt
collection.
bondage, yes, debt bondage reduction.
You're
So,
like debt harm something.
yes, debt bond. So you may have seen those already, unpaid. So including that, unpaid wages that are calculated could be reduced by what you have as a work history. So I would caution people to collect whatever information they have about work history, because people could have actually had jobs that were paying and giving them 1099s or some sort of W-2 or something that you would want to know and have a record of. If they filed taxes during the time period of trafficking, you want to know and have a record of that. And you want to check the accuracy and thoroughness, because you'll be signing off on it, and so will the claimant. Some considerations are the missed restitution claims for the CityXGuide petitioners. I think making a note of that is important if they did not receive notification of the restitution when it was available. The ads that were purchased with Bitcoin purchases, so they went to a Bitcoin machine and giving a description of that, because I do not believe the full amount of the Bitcoin is inside of this 215 million. So it may be like a separate claim that could potentially be made.
I still don't
These
understand
are
what Bitcoin
legal
is.
arguments that go beyond, I know, what we were going to be talking about here. The fees and costs of any attorney, I think, need to be explained clearly versus, in the pro bono network, what they are offering with Backpage Remission Network.org and the NCMEC group. Pro
Can I
bono
just
means
say
free.
that
Mhm.
attorneys should not be taking fees from this? That just, I'm
Yeah,
speaking
I mean,
personal thing. Uh, uh, just
um,
just a
so
personal thing.
so I think we started off talking a little bit about the loss of funding in this space. So
I know.
in terms of
It just feels exploitive.
so I know certain children who have lost parents who have received life insurance awards, and they have attorneys who watch after the fund, and the fund gets depleted with attorney's fees because that
Yeah.
attorney is there and has a duty to watch after those funds. Attorney has a job. They're not doing maybe much of a job, but they're doing a job,
Right.
right? That's not a free service in this world.
But this is money that you earned through exploitation. Do you understand? It just feels different to me, but maybe it's I've been doing this
Well,
too long.
I've been doing it a while too, Jess, and my argument is that as a person with being able to make decisions on my own, if I'm completely free to make decisions on my own, I should be able to hire any
Absolutely.
attorney that I want.
I'm
If I
speaking
want
to
a pro
attorneys.
bono free attorney, if I want to have this attorney, or if I want to have a high paid Ben Crump working on my case, like if whoever I want working on my case, I should be able to walk through the door and decide and have full information about what they're adding or what they're providing in exchange for that, right?
To me, it just feels slimy for an attorney to take fees based on what you are recovering for. but that's just a
But,
personal,
and I think you have to
that's my
flip it,
opinion.
right? I mean, I really, this is a part of the survivor movement. I think that's evolving right now as well. We have agency, and in order to have free agency, it needs to be, the conversation needs to be flipped from we're giving this to you to I am hiring you.
Yeah,
I am hiring you, and I'm either going to pay no fees and costs, or I'm going to pay no fees, no costs, or I'm going to pay a fee, or I'm going to pay a low bono fee, or I'm going to pay a higher fee because I know you're going to do X, Y, and Z for me. And that's going to make my life easier. And I want to be associated or work with you. And so, just like anyone else in the public has a right to hire and choose
yep,
between these different, levels of representation in terms of fees and what they're getting, it's being a fully aware, conscious consumer
of
that I
course.
think is important. But giving the power, true power back to survivors is really my goal. I don't charge, I'm not charging for these, and I don't charge,
Right.
but I am
I
privileged.
wouldn't.
I
Yeah.
am privileged. I am married to a husband who is saying this is right. This is good. This is not, we're not getting a tax write-off for this. We're not getting, we're not getting anything for this. This is free time that I'm committed to doing this because it's the right thing to do. But I am privileged to be in this position. Now, Carissa unmarried, or me unmarried, not having somebody to help, pick up all of those costs, I would be living under a bridge doing it right now, right? Like, no, that's what happens, is like you could end up yourself not able to continue the work, and that does nothing for the movement. That does nothing for the movement. So I'm getting on a soapbox right now. But if we don't get paid for professional services, it does nothing for the movement. So we have to figure out some way for professional services to be compensated. In the case of Dr. Chambers and him being able to do this pro bono, I think a lot of hospitals figured out that survivors use the emergency room, and that's where we're going, is the emergency room. And if you develop a clinic or something that faces them, that actually serves them and takes care of their medical needs, you save money. Even if it costs you money, it saves money. And I think in the legal field, we haven't figured that out entirely yet, how this actually gets us to justice, faster and a more just society if we offer these legal services paid. Somebody has to pay, and if it's the survivors who choose to pay,
Jews, yeah.
then that is
Mhm.
up to them.
Absolutely.
But I
Gives me the personal heebie-jeebies, but that's
Yes,
just,
yes, but you
and
can't take on every case, right? I mean, like, you can't take on thousands of cases. I can't take on thousands of cases. There's a capacity issue. And then again, some clients are going to want that a different types of representation. They may already
Mhm.
have representation with an attorney as well, that this would compromise their civil case if they took this outside of their hands. And so they need to work with their civil attorney that they currently have, who doesn't have a big pro bono budget to, like a defense firm might, to contribute these hours. So
But then it also just for me says, if you know someone in a big firm, like firms should be stepping up, there's ways in which folks in the legal community should be stepping up.
yeah, no, I think, Justice Law Collaborative is one of them that has, offered their plaintiff's firm, but if they're taking some with me, they're not, they're trying not to take any fees at all. But there's others that are
Hi, Bernie. We've already talked to Bernie about taking these cases.
um
Absolutely, Bernie. We'll be in touch.
yes. So good. There are attorneys who are going to be able to do this, and they're going to find other cases within the case too. So that's the other thing. So they're going to sign up these cases, and then they're going to find, an Epstein in there. And good, shut down Epstein's out there. Shut down those types of people that are the high net worth people that are exploiting. So um, that could be part of the result of this as well. More people getting legal representation, quicker to justice, and more justice that we are able to give out there. I did want to give the website,
Yes, please.
a couple of
In our last few
websites.
minutes.
I think we should do a class together just on that topic. That's Blood boiling a little bit. Oh, if you don't have a social security number or a tax ID number, it won't let you submit the petition online. So I've been told to put in, all zeros, all ones, and then the note about requesting for more time if needed. If your form is already submitted online, being able to go and supplement or withdraw and then reapply. Supplement, I think, is favored. It's under frequently asked question 30 and 31 on the Epic backpageremission.com site. Money received from the trafficker, really be careful about explaining if that went back to furthering the trafficking. I think it's an important explanation to include. And then no receipts for past expenses is going to be very, very common. And there's other ways potentially to pull those past costs and to get documentation for them. Disclosure of diagnosis is something I've been thinking about and want to talk to every claimant about when they disclose a diagnosis. Are they closing doors for themselves in the future? Potentially, this is going on a federal document. I just want to make sure that, they're not applying for some high-level clearance or something. If that's in their future, that we are carefully reviewing the application before we're submitting it. And then what if a settlement or award is confidential? Discussing that with your attorney. So the websites I mentioned, backpageremission.com, that's run by that Epic administrator, and Medical Safe Haven Clinics is available at dignityhealth.org /MSH clinic. And there's another method that will be on our website and my contact information to reach me. Another method to schedule those appointments by emailing, and I'll put it into the...
Now, are you in any way doing any clearinghouse stuff for these cases? Because I know that NCMEC has a process by which you can get a pro bono attorney assigned. Are you doing anything like that as well? And like we're going to be doing with in partnership with MVLS?
Yes. And so the attorneys that I will refer to include NCMEC's group. So I'll go forward with claimants that reach out to me. The first thing I'll ask them is, do you already have an attorney that represents you in any trafficking case? That's always the first most important question. Do you already have an attorney? If you do, let's get you talking back with them first about doing your remission and doing it without any fees. And here's how they could lower the costs. If there are costs, they could contact Dignity Health, make an appointment for you with this group that Dr. Chambers has trained, or other ways we could help lower the costs for the client. And we ask them to reduce the fees with their attorney. Doesn't mean their attorney will reduce the fees to nothing, but if the attorney does keep the fees where they're at, then I think they do owe some sort of explanation of what they're doing or what they're doing differently or what value they're adding by keeping those fees where they're at. So I might refer back to their own attorney first, but with more information and resources to say, here's what you can bring to your attorney to help keep maybe their fees down, your costs down.
Excellent. So that there's a continuity of care that is, I think, important.
And then Backpage Remission network.org, which is the website that NCMEC runs, I'll direct them to request an attorney from there if I think if they say they don't want to do any other civil cases, if they don't want to work with a civil attorney. If they have other civil cases that they want to have evaluated, then I might take them to a plaintiff's attorney, or ask them, do you want to speak with a plaintiff's attorney about your case? And then they could talk to them, and you could talk to them also about doing the remission application, and we will ask them to do it with no fees.
Okay. But they do this, we can refer people directly to you, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. And then we will also be in touch more. Bernie, I'll get in touch with you directly. We are figuring out the process of being able to get some cases referred directly through MVLS, which will be kind of a nice continuance of the work that we do in our partnership with them. So more information to come with that. But it sounds like two main gateways to representation, and obviously to more information, and then maybe three potentially,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and we're doing the webinar every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, that we're trying to get to as many people as possible with the information as it's coming out. But that is also a good way to get a hold of me and ask questions, and they could be very general questions. You could sign on anonymously and ask questions as well. So if there are any questions out there, and like I said, we're trying to get Ruth as an AI bot that
Ruth.
isn't practicing law, but that's Parasol Cooperative and the Ruth chatbot that they have to be able to help in real time.
And folks can come to these things as potential claimants. They can come as service providers looking for information, and can they come as attorneys who might need technical expertise?
All of the above have come in.
Beautiful.
Yeah, all of the above. And I've done a lot of technical assistance, just one-on-one with attorneys as well, which I'm willing to do. And that is the majority of my pro bono effort, is just educating attorneys who may have hundreds or maybe 1,000 cases that have Backpage, potentially have Backpage remission claims and CityXGuide claims.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you so very much. I just want to see if anyone has any questions. You got 2 minutes to get them in. No, forever hold your peace. I'm just kidding. What I'm planning on doing with this, normally we just post them to our website that we share, and anyone can access them at any time. But because of like I said, the timing issue, I'll make sure to get this webinar out to the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force, which is where we put the ads for this webinar. And then I have just a couple of extra questions that I may follow up with you on. If anyone has any questions additionally after this webinar wraps up, you can email me. If I don't know the answer, obviously I will send you to Carissa. But, my plan for this, Carissa, even though, we have we're understaffed and have a million of our own cases, what I've been trying to do is, just say like, I'm referring clients and then helping out in terms of like, I have all this material that you don't have to get from the client, and just really helping in the way that, a legal advocate would help. But who knows what I'll be motivated to do over my winter break. So,
well, and I have I don't know maybe we can stop recording for a second.
Oh, all right. So, well, yeah, let me say thank you to you very much for this. And thank you to everyone who continues to make these webinar series so worth our time. Again, Jess Emerson from the Human Trafficking Prevention Project. We have our website available at htprevention.org if you need to refer cases, or if you have any questions about continued partnership with the HTPP. Carissa, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you.